Alright, today we're going to work on creature sketches. So the first thing I did is I went out and found some reference images. I'm going to use gorilla, and I'm going to use some octopus and some alligator type of scales and things like that. So I'm kind of using more lizard aspects. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start blocking out my shape. The shape is different from form. Shape is just the kind of overall appearance that I want to perceive at this character. A lot of times silhouette works as well, and you can do the same things like this. And so I'm just blocking that out right away. I'm not worried about anything else. I'm not worried about anatomy. And then my next stage is when I start actually working on form. So form for me is kind of the shape of each limb, how things bend, and kind of the overall topology of a creature. And so here you can see that I'm ultimately just blocking in simple primitives and kind of doing a little bit more anatomy. I've lowered the background. This way I can see the better shape and form. Now I'm basically putting in simple shapes. I'm not getting too complex. I'm not worried about that at this point in time. I kind of want more of the feeling of like what the character is. And I'm also kind of putting in the little things I've missed. So like the fingers, thumbs, claws type of thing. And so that is kind of my next step. Now realize I've sped up this like I think 5 times, so I'm generally taking my time in drawing. Little sketches are usually better than larger sketches because they allow you to kind of refine things real quick. In this case I'm just doing a full screen just to show you all. The next thing is I'm adding in a little bit of like more detail. So I'm adding in spikes, I'm adding in tentacles in the mouth. I want like pincers from like a cluck crab or something like that. And again, I'm going over the top of that with a new layer and then starting to refine the details. Now at this stage, nothing needs to be perfect. You can see here that the arm doesn't look quite right. You know, it could bend a little bit more, it could be pushed a little bit more type of thing. I am just thumbnailing this out. My idea of a thumbnail is just to get the rough details, and I can always edit it and kind of paint over it down the road here. But now this next stage is ultimately my detail stage. This is where I'm going through, and I'm basically going through and picking out each phase, if you will, each section, and just adding a little bit more details. Kind of giving an overall feel of this character creature. Now, as I continue on doing this, there's the feature of anatomy I'm adding. I'm adding in like bones and muscles, and that's going to give me the next layer of things. And if you don't understand what anatomy you need to use, start looking at the creatures. Use escorches, use any type of skeletal book drawing or any type of musculature book drawing to kind of help you and build out like what you need. And if you don't need it, there's tons of scientific journals and stuff like that for vets, for tons of creatures out there to give you a better idea. And so again, I'm adding more details, I'm adding wrinkles, I'm adding more spikes, I'm thinking about the overall shape of things. And my next phase is to, once I've got this done, is to go through and start adding a little bit of shading. A little bit of shading, and it doesn't have to be like realistic or anything like that, but a little bit of shading pushes the depth of your character. So I'm adding a little bit of weight to line work. Any of the outer work lines I'm adding a little bit more thickness to, and that's going to kind of separate that image as well. And then as I finish this section here, I'm just basically putting a little bit of an outline. I just kind of like that look, so I'm just kind of roughing that in. Again, this is a sketch, so I'm not too worried about perfection or if my angles line up or things like that. Okay, now here's where I'm just going to add in shading. So the first thing I do is I figure out a direction the light comes in, and then I'm basically just adding in where that light would be. So if it's coming from top, say left, I'm going to shade everything that's right on the right side of the body, as well as as well as anything else that needs to be shaded. So I think about cast shadows. So here I'm putting in a little bit more shadows for the head, and I'm going to have to cast a little bit of that on top of the head. And so that's going to, again, help you push the separation of your character, foreground, background of the character. Even though it's one plane, it will push things forward. So again, it doesn't have to be too complex, just so that it reads relatively well. And then finally, as I'm getting done with this, I'm going to go through the next phase and I'm going to start detailing things up. So as you see, I'm putting in the shading and finishing that. The next thing is I'm going to go through and add a little texture. This could be the lizard skin, this could be alligator skin, and I'm going to just do it in certain areas. You don't need to fill everything up. You just need to give a rough estimation of where that type of skin comes in effect. So I'm adding some veins so I know that the skin is relatively thin there. I'm darkening some of the mouth and adding things like that in there. And then I'm going in, and this is where I'm kind of adding little dot suction cups to the tentacles, and I'm adding in a little bit more cast shadows. But ultimately, the big idea is that you get your rough down. Now, when you're doing character design, generally you're going to do this quite a bit of time. This means you're going to probably create 50 sketches of these animals, beasts, creatures, so that you have a good variation. And then you can start picking and choosing what you like and what you don't like, and kind of moving off from there. So you can see here I'm actually adding a little texture, adding a little bit of variation, and I'm using a real thin pencil brush to basically get real thin line work. And that's ultimately just allowing me to work with that. So if you like this, feel free to hit the like and subscribe button. I hope to see you again. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I hope you have a great day.